Hi guys, so I've received some comments and emails about how dramatics feel like they look intimidating in their own lines. So that's what I want to touch on today. If you still don't know your body type or your best colors, I do offer consults through my website and I will leave a link to those down below. But if you already know that you are a dramatic and you are a bit new to Kibbe, then you might find that you have always had a problem where you feel like you might look a bit too angular or a bit too severe in a lot of different clothing. And you can see Kira here, she looks quite angular there, and it looks like she might be wearing some dramatic lines there. So it kind of makes you think that maybe dramatics are meant to look intimidating and angular and severe. But before we go any further, we have to acknowledge that just like dramatics can have a tendency to look severe in lines that are not their own, so do all the other types have their own problems when they don't wear their own lines. So naturals can also look quite severe and stiff, like Megan on the left. We have Tessa, who is a Gamine, who looks painfully boring there. And we have Kirsten Dunst, who is a classic, and she looks really not put together there, even though she's wearing heels and practically a blazer. And we have Drew Barrymore, who is a romantic, who can tend to look quite frumpy when she doesn't wear her own lines. So every single type has their own types of tendencies that they might fall into when they don't wear their own lines. Having said all of that, let's focus on dramatics. So you can see Kira here looking quite intimidating and severe in both of these images. Now, I still think she looks beautiful in both of them, but you can see that these kinds of primarily theatrical romantic looks can be very separate from her and can really bring out her angularity. And that's certainly a type of look, but it might not be the type of look that she was going for. Of course, I don't know Kira, I don't know the kind of look she was going for, but I usually do find that when people go for these kinds of looks, they're usually looking to look very sensual and soft and feminine, and Kira has only brought out her angularity here in these looks. The same goes for these two. She looks quite intimidating in both of them. Somehow, even on the left, it looks a little bit intimidating and potentially even a tiny bit unsettling. And that is because she is not wearing her own lines and she's not posing in line with her body type either. So everything is kind of a mixture of messages, and it's not really clear what the vibe she's going for is and what she is trying to do. And if we pay close attention on the right, we might say, oh, well, she's just trying to look intimidating on the right. She's trying to look very overt. But actually, I'm not even sure if that was the intention. And this is the thing with all my videos. It's all about intention. It's not about having to look a certain way. It's simply looking the way that you intend to look, whatever that may be. So it's possible that Kira was actually going for a look similar to Rachel McAdams' look, who is a theatrical romantic on the left there. And at first, you could say, well, look, it looks nothing. No, they're not going for the same look. They don't look the same whatsoever. It's a totally different kind of vibe to the entire photo shoot. It looks completely different. But if you pay closer attention, you can see that the body language is pretty similar. The gaze is pretty similar. The makeup is even kind of similar. Rachel does have a bit of a smoky eye there. Their hand is by their face. They're pouting a little bit and they're sort of looking down a little bit. So this is really quite a similar look. It simply looks very, very different on both of them because of their different body types, and it looks quite severe and very overt and very, very sexy on Kira, and on Rachel it looks softly sensual, sexy, and not so much very overt. So they both look good, but they have achieved different looks. But let's pay closer attention. So now we can see that on the left, Kira actually looks less intimidating than she does on the right. And you could say, well, it's Kira's body language on the left. She's more casual on the left. But really, she has some pretty dominant body language there on the left, and it's actually on the right that she has more soft body language. So I don't think it's the body language. It's not the lighting, because the lighting is harsher on the left. And it's not the angle, because on the left they're doing this low angle, which actually is going to make her jawline more angular, and it's going to make her look taller. So it's really not so much about any of that, and it's actually about the lines that she is wearing. So on the left, she is wearing dramatic lines, and she looks just right there. She doesn't look too intimidating. She looks like she is pretty cool, pretty casual, and she just looks like she's being herself. Doesn't look any way particularly intimidating. But then you could say to yourself, well, you know what? Since we're paying attention, I do notice that she has some dark eyeliner on the right. And it's the eye makeup that's making her look intimidating on the right. It's not the lines. And that bold eye makeup is actually in line with her body type recommendations. So what's going on? Well, it's not really the eye makeup, because again, on the right here, she's wearing very minimal makeup, and definitely not a lot of eye makeup there, just like on the left. And you can see that she still looks really more intimidating on the right than she does on the left, even though on the right she is lounging around, she is wearing some soft sort of frilly dress and everything like that. And the angle is higher, it's not lower. Still, it's really the lines, and it's not the eye makeup, it's the lines. And on the left, that's why she looks just like herself. So the take-home message here is that when dramatics wear their own lines, they actually look not intimidating, they just look good. And if you are a dramatic and you find that you do look intimidating in your own lines without that being the intention, you might actually be wearing some Gamine lines. So you can see on the right, this original image of Kiara that I showed, and how she looked intimidating, quote, in her own lines, which these are not her own lines, these are Gamine lines on the right, because they are tight and fitted. So that might be something that you're running into. You might think to yourself, we always think of dramatic lines as being angular, as being very stiff, but we forget that they're also a little bit oversized, and they are not fitted. And that is the biggest difference between Gamine lines and dramatic lines. And when a dramatic wears Gamine lines, those lines are going to make their bones and their angularity really stand out, because Gamine lines are short and small, and dramatic lines are long and narrow. But both share the angularity and sometimes some stiffness as well. But don't forget that huge difference is that the dramatic lines are going to be slightly larger. And you can see how on the left, her blazer is oversized but still stiff, and it still creates some long vertical lines as well. And that's why it looks so harmonious and amazing and effortless on her. Almost as important as the slightly oversized aspect of the lines is that they are long. Or maybe it is just as important that the lines are long. So you can see that with this blazer, it is kind of oversized. You don't have to go crazy and wear it as oversized as she did in the previous image, but it is a little bit oversized maybe, and it actually looks really good on her in the close-up on the right. But then when you look from afar, because it crops like that, it just looks a little bit separate from her, and it just cuts her in the wrong place, and it cuts her long, lean lines into short ones, and it just sort of tells the eye, this isn't right, and that's why it doesn't look good. So just as important as stiff and angular is, and straight lines, is also long lines and oversized silhouettes. And if you go for those types of lines, then you will just look like your beautiful self. You will not look like you are particularly intimidating unless you want to look intimidating. So yes, dramatic lines are not tight and they are not short, but they are slightly oversized and elongated, on top of being straight and stiff, and also potentially having some asymmetry and some geometrics as well. So I thought these two images were sort of interesting. You can see that again on the left, Kara looks a bit intimidating, and I think she looks really good there though. And I like the image on the right as well. And on the left, you could say, Initially, you could say, oh, this is a dramatic look, but it actually has elements of Gamine. And now I hope you can see what I see. It has that fittedness of Gamine lines, and that's why it's making her look very, very bold, very angular as a dramatic, and that can be a certain effect that you can go for. But it also has some elements of dramatic as well. It has some larger angular lapels, so usually most looks are mixtures of all kinds of different things, and primarily though, I would say it is kind of an even mixture between dramatic and Gamine. So that's why it works for her and it looks good on her, because it still has some of those dramatic elements. It just makes her look a bit more badass by adding some of those Gamine elements, some of that fittedness in this case. And on the right, we have primarily dramatic with some elements of flamboyant natural, with that slightly unconstructed silhouette and the slightly tousled hair as well. I actually did a video on this called Break Kibbe's Rules, on how if a dramatic wears flamboyant natural lines or some flamboyant natural elements, it will make the dramatic's angularity look a bit more delicate, like a delicate angularity rather than a bold angularity. So I will leave a link to that video down below if you guys are interested. So you can see just how elements of some Gamine in her look on the left is going to make her look a bit more angular and a bit more bold. So flamboyant natural elements in her look, like on the right, will make her look a bit more delicate. So she has a lot of room to play around with different looks, and it all depends on what she is going for. But that's not what we're talking about here. Here we are talking about dramatic lines and dramatic blazers specifically, and the misunderstanding of what dramatic lines actually are. So let's take a look at some dramatic blazers and some more dramatic looks and see how Kira actually looks in her own lines. So you can see on the left, she looks pretty ladylike, pretty elegant. In the middle, she looks a tiny bit casual, pretty put together. And on the right, she looks absolutely adorable in that very oversized dramatic jacket. Now, this kind of oversized jacket, like on the far right, of course, is going to make anyone look smaller and tiny. And if a romantic wears it, it will have the same kind of effect. But when Kira wears it, she has the added benefit of it actually looking like it's in harmony with her lines, because she is a dramatic, and that intense oversized element is making her look quite small. Dramatic lines are also minimal in detail. You can see, I just love that look on the left on her. I don't know why, I think she just looks so elegant and sophisticated. That minimal detail on her looks amazing. And in the middle, we have another pretty standard look. We have some jeans and that blazer that's a bit oversized, and remember, it's also longer, and it has a pretty straight line to it, and the whole look is minimal detail, and it just looks really good on her, really effortless and perfect. And on the right, I also love that. It's the same kind of idea. Minimal detail, long, stiff, vertical lines, slightly oversized. She also looks amazing in some deep V's, and she looks great with that bob hairstyle there, or even with a slightly stiff bob like on the left. I think that looks great on her, and some metallic fabric and a long line of the same color looks amazing. Again, minimal detail is great. So that is it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will leave a link down below to my consults and to some videos that you could take a look at. And I will talk to you next time. Leave some comments and questions and discussion below as usual.